Well, welcome back to the Private Practice Elevation Podcast, John.
Daniel, thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, no problem. And as I said just a minute ago, you are, I believe you're our first return guest on the
I'm
podcast here. It's
so
been
honored to be the guy who gets to come back twice.
yeah, yeah, super excited. And really the reason being is that you and I have we cross paths with different clients and stuff that we work with, and I've had you on before talking about Google Ads and search and stuff like that. And so we were emailing, and you had made mention that you were seeing some just interesting trends and learning some things in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, and just things that
Right.
are affecting therapists and people in private practice. So I just thought that we would just have a conversation, just
Yeah.
learn what you're learning, and you can just share all of your wisdom and knowledge with us. Does that sound good?
Yeah. There have been some drastic changes in search volume since social distancing
Yes.
began in mid-March. Keywords that were really good for the longest time for me, things like counseling near me or therapy near me or your city near me or city counseling. Um, those get a lot less searches now. There are a lot
Yeah.
more searches for online therapy and online counseling. And really, if you're focusing as we kind of talk about some of these things, those are really the terms that people are searching for largely. There are some others like virtual therapy or video therapy or
Mhm.
telehealth. I feel like some of those are starting to come into play a little more, specifically with telehealth. I think people know a little more about that now over the last month and a half. Um, but still, the large amount of search that you're going to see is for online therapy and online counseling are really the two that people are using the most.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. I mean, before we get into a little bit more of that stuff, just for people who don't know who you are, sorry to interrupt and backtrack here, but
That's all right.
I want people to know who
Sure.
you are and what do you do, and then we'll get into the meat here.
So specifically, I am a specialist in Google Ads, those ads that appear up at the top of Google. Um, usually those first 3 to 4 results will have an ad tag, and those are all run out of a program called Google Ads. And that's really what I specialize in making sure that you are getting a return on investment out of Google Ads. Making sure that we have the right keywords, that we have the right ads, and that they're going to the right place on like websites like you make.
Cool. Yeah, and because what you do really does involve a lot of keyword research, some of what you do kind of overlaps with a little bit of what I do with SEO. And I know that everybody listening who has a website for their private practice is always concerned with search engine optimization and making sure that they're getting
Mhm.
traffic. Some of them may or may not be using Google Ads, or maybe thinking about using Google Ads. So I think that this is a really good time to have this conversation, because there's just things are just so different right now during this
Right.
pandemic, as you said. So want people to have all the information that they know, in case they're in that place where it is a little tight right now, and not a lot of clients, maybe not in your practice, clients might not be showing up, but that doesn't mean it's a bad time to invest in Google Ads. It's just doing it the smart way. So that's why I wanted to have you unpack this a little for us.
Sure.
So you started talking about terms that people should use. So you said,
Right.
what were the two most important ones that you just mentioned? They were
I would say it's online therapy and online counseling. So there's a tool in Google called Google Trends that you can look at. And you can put in a keyword and it will show you its popularity essentially by week. And it's a 0 from 100 number. And this isn't based on any specific location, like you can just put in United States or you can put your state.
Mhm.
So if I look at Google Trends before and after COVID, so online counseling originally had a 42 ranking out of 100. Now online counseling is 100. Online
Wow.
therapy is now 100. And then kind of the inverse has happened to some of my better keywords, like counseling near me in early February was a 97. This week it's a 31. And
Wow.
so you can see the drop off. And same thing with therapy near me. Like I just put in Dallas counseling, and for the state of Texas, and it went from a 76 to a 40.
Hmm.
So there's a lot less search volume on a lot of the traditional keywords that Google Ads campaigns and search engine optimization really depend upon to get in new customers.
Yeah.
Um, Really, kind of looking at that period in March, I've seen in some cases, a 70% drop off in terms of search volume during, that initial hit of social distancing.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy.
Yes.
But I think at the same time though, that's encouraging because I'm seeing so many people making that switch to online counseling, very quickly. So just to know that people are still searching for counselors and therapists, like that's got to be encouraging, right?
Absolutely. And really all of my clients, that's, I'll quickly put together a telehealth solution. I'm sure the telehealth companies have done really well over the last month.
Absolutely.
Um, and so, and, putting a pop-up on your website, but I also think that, at this point, you really need to have a page specifically about telehealth, especially if you want to advertise it. If you want to advertise online therapy, you want to be able to take somebody to a page that really talks about what you're doing for online therapy, especially during this particular time. So,
Right.
I mean, there's some things there, and for those clients, who had never even dreamed of 2 months ago doing telehealth therapy, now I'm putting in those some of those keywords into their campaigns to try to get them traffic. Um, but overall, I mean, traffic has definitely dropped during this time.
Yeah. One question I have for you on the ad front is about and keywords is about competition. Because I'm my background's a little bit more in like SEO, and
Right.
typically, I know pretty much like what we need to do to get somebody to rank for marriage counseling in Atlanta. But if someone's now doing online marriage counseling, marriage therapy, you're now competing with all of Georgia. So what can you give us any tips or advice on how that works with, how can you beat competition? I mean, obviously you can spend more on the ads,
Mhm.
but even if you have any knowledge on like keywords and SEO, what we need to do for our websites, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So, and Google Ads is very much an auction. Is every time a search is run, there's an auction run within Google Ads. And so it's really interesting to watch because there is a lot less demand now, but there are people who all of a sudden they've opened their campaigns up from just running in the Boston area if you're a Boston area therapist, and now you're running towards the entire state of Massachusetts. So I am seeing for some of my clients competitors that have never been there before and would have never probably dreamed of advertising in their area two or 3 months ago.
Hmm.
And so that has raised the cost per click in some areas. Um, and then kind of the other interesting part is for online counseling and online therapy, which didn't have a lot of searches before. There's now a lot more searches for those. And I've seen, there are a lot of people going after those. And traditionally, those have been dominated by e-counseling and Talkspace and BetterHelp. Have really, they've always run national campaigns
Yeah.
and they've got very large ad budgets. But I think I've probably seen $5 to $7 in terms of an average cost per click for those keywords so far, and that's just with a couple of weeks worth of data. There's not even very many impressions and clicks, but that's kind of what I'm seeing for those. So there's once again there's a lot of chaos out there.
Yes, there is. Yeah, we were talking before we hit record here that it's a little bit crazy out there, and
Yeah.
just it's crazy in our businesses, and I think that there's certainly a lot of fear, going around. And how has it been, for you in your business and with, the campaigns and stuff that you're running with your clients? Have you been able to really help them pivot?
For a number of my existing clients, we've been able to quickly pivot towards online counseling. And the first couple of weeks were probably the worst when social distancing started. But now that we've got those
Yeah.
online keywords, we've got, after 2 weeks, you had your online counseling page on your website. That has certainly helped increase the leads since then.
Yeah. Great. Great. All right. Well, what else do you want to talk about as far as
Well, I feel like I've been
keywords
talking about a
research?
whole lot of bad news so far. Can we talk about something good?
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
So the two things that I think are that we have to keep in mind here is that there is I think a hidden opportunity in this if you are a therapist who has had to pivot to online counseling and you never thought that you would have to do this. And if you like this, and maybe you have a very specific specialty, you can now advertise instead of just 10 miles around your office or 15 miles around your office. You now have a chance to advertise to your entire state or where you have you have a license, kind of what you were talking about before. So if
Right.
you're comfortable with this, or and you enjoy this concept of doing online therapy, there is an opportunity for you to be able to find more of your ideal customers who might be a couple hundred miles away from you, but now um, that the world has become much smaller because of things like Zoom, the platform we're on right now, who once again those guys must be doing really well. um, so that's really potentially could open up your practice for you and allow you to do that specialization a little more.
Yeah, that's great. And as as you're speaking, I'm thinking through my SEO brain and lens, and the same thing like what you mentioned, having a page on your website about telehealth. That might be step one, and I think that's certainly step one for people. And
Mhm.
if you're advertising, you've got to get something up. You've got to let people know, like, yes, I'm still available. I'm still taking clients, and we do that virtually now in this crazy world. But I think the next step for people, if they really want to get more nuanced and more targeting, is to start having online therapy for eating disorders, online therapy for quitting smoking, whatever it is. Like, start
Right.
getting into some of these niches that people already have in their practice, because then those are going to be more targeted search terms. You'll probably pay, I would assume you'd pay less for those clicks, if you're advertising, because it'd be a little bit more nuanced. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm starting to see more, online depression therapy or online
Yeah.
anxiety therapy.
Right.
And I think that that's even something that you can mix in throughout your website. You might have that page on your website that's specifically very telehealth based, but then you go into your couples counseling page or your anxiety counseling page and you talk about, in person, but also that you have that online component. That's a
Yeah.
lot of what I've done for my ads is instead of saying call now to make an appointment, that's changed to start online counseling now. Um, so those are just some of the changes
Yeah.
that we can kind of make during this time.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that is certainly hopeful. And one thing that I've been super encouraged with is just seeing people pivot in their businesses and seeing people just think about things a little bit differently, because we're forced to, we're forced to make these
Right.
changes, and you know, I just want to be encouraging to people. I believe that this is obviously going to pass. It's we're going to get through this, and I think at the other end of it, and we were talking about this too again before we hit record. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to need help. They're going to need therapy.
Mhm.
Whether they're starting that now with online therapy or afterwards they're going to be searching. So I think now is a great time to start writing some of that content on your website, if you can, and I think you should invest in some advertising, to start getting some people into your funnels and into your business, especially if you, I know it's a little counterintuitive, but it hurts a little bit to invest. But if you can invest $1 to make $3 and kind of multiply that over, you're going to see more income in your business.
No, absolutely. There's going to be a large amount of pent up demand once social distancing starts to end. I think both for counseling, my wife being a testing psychologist, they really can't do hardly anything right now. I think that there's going to be a lot of pent up demand for psychological testing after this. But I mean, just thinking about regular therapy, there's probably a lot of couples counseling that's going to need to be done after this. There's probably a lot of people who would like to do therapy right now, but they're in a really enclosed space. They might be on top of a bunch of different people, and it's really
Yeah.
hard hard to go off and find a room for an hour that you can be left alone in.
Right.
I'm just hoping my children won't interrupt me while I'm doing this podcast. Speaking of, so there will be some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, and there is this kind of classic problem in business of when we enter a recession, which we certainly are. There a lot of people, the tendency is to try to take everything off of that's considered an expense, like marketing. But the problem is marketing is not buying a computer. It's not, buying insurance. Marketing is what allows you to find customers. So at a time where you're hurting for customers, you're going to stop advertising and try to get fewer customers. It's kind of counterintuitive. And there are a lot of business studies that show that the companies that continue to try to advertise during recessions tend to come out of it better than the ones that just knee-jerk reacted and cut their advertising. So
Right.
so there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel for us.
Yeah,
See,
absolutely.
we got to say something nice. I feel better.
I wish I had one of those like little synthesizers where it just went like a tling, like the sun shining or something like that.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's gonna be okay. Tling.
Yeah, go watch what is it? Some Good News with John Krasinski right now on
Oh,
YouTube.
I love that.
Those things will make you feel better.
I love that. My wife and I just stumbled upon those, and we love it. It's so funny
Yeah,
and
go
sweet.
watch that.
All right, John. Well, thanks so much for being on. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience?
I think the main thing is to just not lose hope, and that this is going to end, and at the end of this, more than any of the recessions that we've been through before, people are going to need mental health counseling because of a lot of people have probably lost loved ones during this, and being stuck in their homes for such a long time is probably really hard on us, particularly on some extroverts in the world. So
yeah,
but yeah, the things will improve, and that your practices can continue to strive. And once again, that there's some potential hidden opportunity there in online counseling, especially if you find that you enjoy working from home.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. And where can people find you if they want to learn a little bit more or maybe get started with Google Ads with you?
If you're interested in learning a little more about what I do, just go out to Revkey, that's REVKEY.com, and call me or fill out a form on my website, and I'll get in contact with you.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Daniel.